like to take a moment and thank our sponsor. If you have a laser device for training and you want to take it to the next level, or if you're looking to get into using a laser device for training, check out the products at laserapp.com. LASRAPP.com. You can use code CSP2021 for 15% off the items you've selected. And thanks for checking them out. Welcome to this week's edition of the Casual Shooters Podcast. This week you get me and only me. The other two can't make it, so you're just going to get me and a guest. And as usual, we have a guest. This week, our guest is a little different than what we would normally have. We're going to branch off into the world of rifle shooting and not stick with pistol this week. And my guest and I share a few commonalities, which we'll get into and you'll learn during the podcast. With that being said, let's bring him in and let's welcome Phillip Velayo to the Casual Shooters Podcast. How you doing, Phil?
Hey, buddy. How are you? Thanks for having me on here.
Well, thanks for being on. Greatly appreciate it. So take a minute, if you would, and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so my name is Phillip Velayo. I'm a former Marine Corps Scout Sniper. Spent 11 years in the Marine Corps, all of which I spent in the Scout Sniper community. What we would consider in our community is stay baby. Spent my time at Camp Pendleton, California in 1st Battalion, 4th Marines for 8 years. I did 4 deployments with them, one of them being a combat deployment to Iraq. And then after that, it was obviously time to go. And then my last 3 years of my service, I spent down at 1st Mardiv, Camp Pendleton, Scout Sniper Schoolhouse, making and training Marine Corps Scout Snipers. Got out in 2018 and landed a job at Gunworks, training their long range hunting curriculum. It's really nice. It was really nice to get into the crowd of the hunting side, the 4-legged critter aspect, but deep down inside, my heart still wanted to relate and train those that were hunting 2-legged critters. So Kaylin and I not only started a podcast, but started up a company called Modern Day Sniper, and now we focus on military law enforcement, long range training, as well as civilian. And then obviously on the side, I am a national precision rifle competitor to upkeep with the relevancy of precision rifle shooting.
Very nice. And we'll get into all that. Once you get that in your blood, it's kind of hard to get it out.
It is. Yeah.
I keep going back to it and back to it. Just real quick. When I got out, I was actually in the business of training people as well.
Okay.
Did that for a couple of years and then changed career paths. So, Phil, what we normally do is we ask some personal questions right off the bat to get to know our guest.
Okay.
So I've got a few questions for you. The first one, your favorite movie.
Ooh, my favorite movie. It's a toss-up between Tombstone and Last of the Mohicans.
Ooh, yeah, good. 2 good choices.
Yeah.
I like it.
I would say more or less it's Tombstone followed up by Last of the Mohicans. Mainly because I can probably quote a lot more with Tombstone than I can with Last of the Mohicans.
Yeah, very good movie. Your favorite book?
Ooh, my favorite book. I would say one of my favorite books right now is Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. That's one of the ones that I've just read probably in the last year or two, and I've often thumb through it every now and then.
What's it about?
Jocko Willink is a former Navy SEAL commander, and he just talks about kind of his relating his experiences as a Navy SEAL commander in his combat deployment to kind of like a real world application for businesses and, leadership taking extreme ownership when they do fail and stuff like that. It's very much like a leadership and accountability book.
Okay. Your favorite superhero?
Ooh. I want to say it's got to be Superman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any particular reason?
Just ability to fly. I'm sure and pretty much be bulletproof. I'm sure kryptonite still sucks, but not too much kryptonite. flying around.
Right. But otherwise, he's indestructible.
That's right.
All right. Your favorite historical figure?
Oh, favorite historical figure. You know, I go in waves, but I would say I gravitate toward Greek mythology a lot. So I want to say kind of, you know, just in what I see with movies, but I'd say like Zeus would be like the very first thing that comes to mind.
Okay. Again, another all-powerful figure.
I'm sure it's pretty generic.
Yeah. Now, if money were no option, which rifle caliber, and optic would you choose?
Oh, if it was just a one and done gun, the one rifle that I had to, you know, I would say a actually international chambered in 308 slinging 175 Sierra Match Kings with a 24-inch barrel topped with a Collis K525i and suppressed. Yeah, that'd be my my ticket. And the reason why is because I mean, if that was the only rifle that I had, I mean that barrel, I mean it's going to take a while to shoot 10,000. I mean even then, you know, it's been a while since I've burnt out a 308 barrel. So
yeah,
I'm a big fan of the 308.
And I'm guessing with an Accuracy International barrel, you're probably going to you might get closer to 12 grand on that one.
Yeah, yeah.
They put some pretty good barrels on there. It's funny you said Accuracy International because that would also be the brand of rifle that I would choose. I would also choose a 5 to 25, but I think I would do a 6.5 Creed. I just like the ballistics on it better than the 308.
You know, it's funny. It's a tricky question because if you ever look at a lot of my posts, like I'm a big 6.5 Creedmoor fanboy, just because of the well-roundedness of the cartridge, but just because of just the sheer fact of, you know, barrel life, you know, and like, you know, shit hits the fan scenario, right? I'm more likely to use the 308 a lot longer than a 6.5.
Well, and I would still say that you have a better chance of finding ammo for 308 than a 6.5. As much as 6.5 has become mainstream,
yeah,
308's been around a lot longer.
It has.
I mean, you can find it in people's garages, you know. So
yeah, exactly. And then, you know, with that, you just, I mean, within at least 10, 15 rounds, be able to figure out, you know, what kind of trajectory it's getting with it, with not only today's technology, but just someone that just understands how to essentially map out the firing solution from a rifle.
Right. All right. So since you said that, I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to a question that I was going to ask later, but since you're talking about mapping them out, what ballistic calculator do you use and why?
So I use the Hornady 4 Degree of Freedom software right now. It's free. I like it not only because it's the fact that it's free. I'm a huge fan of the user interface. I think the user interface is probably one of the cleanest out there. Super easy to use. And then to be able to essentially map out or get your range card with ease and validate or true your trajectory to make sure your software is lining up with your rifle. They have a thing called axial form factor. And honestly, I've with the bullets inside the profile, I've had, you know, first round impacts out to a mile without even adjusting anything. And obviously that's a lot with using their bullets or the bullets that are in there. So the only thing that's tricky for guys when I do teach, when they don't have a bullet inside the library, you know, we have to use a BC calculator, but it's still fine. But I think it's for sure one of the best solvers out there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've not used their app, but I've used it on their website, and I like it a lot. It's very good. They actually have a lot of information on their website in general, which I like. Now, So is a mile the farthest you've shot?
No, the furthest I've shot was actually in the Marine Corps. It was with our 50 cals. It was 2,400. It was just a live fire training exercise. We had 50 cal day, and we had mock tanks out to a little bit over a mile and a half. And at that point, we were just kind of walking it in. And after about probably like 6 or 7 rounds of getting this thing walked in, I put 2 on target. So that was fun.
My claim to fame when I was at the schoolhouse at Quantico is one shot offhand. I hit a tank at 2,000 yards.
Nice. With the 50?
With the Barrett offhand.
Nice.
And I held the horizontal reticle line on the top of the tree line and pulled the trigger and hit it broadside. I was like, well, I don't know if I could ever do that again. That was just a lucky guess for a holdover.
Yeah, exactly.
I swagged it the best I could.
It's funny that you say that. Extreme long range, when you look at it like just at face value, you're like, oh man, you're just kind of in the prone shooting at distances. And obviously when you send like as many rounds down range, obviously you're going to connect. But like when you do connect, it's such a great feeling. Like I enjoy shooting extended to extreme long ranges. I consider like the threshold of 1,000 to a mile not really extreme, just because there's cartridges out there that are easily pushing hitting those limits, even with a 6.5. So like my definition of extreme long range and guys that do it consistently is like a mile plus.
That's definitely extreme.
Yeah. So
I imagine they're only shooting steel. Otherwise there's no way you're going to know where you're hitting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was a nice thing about shooting that Barrett was all we shot was Ralphus. So you could see your impact. So
yep. It was always nice to shoot it in low light too, just to really see it.
Oh
really
yeah,
see the effects of the Ralphus round. Yep.
Yeah. So the all right, I'll do another quick story here to give you an idea how old again I am. Before we went live, I was telling Phil just how old I am, how long ago it was that I was in the Marines and at the sniper school. But it was me, Gunny Morgan, I don't remember his first name, and J.W. Johnson. I don't know if you know him or have heard of him.
Jared Johnson?
No, J.W. Johnson.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, we all went to Aberdeen back in, I'm going to guess, 91, early 92. And we, out to 2,000 yards, shot a huge aircraft target made of steel to create the BDC for the Nrl that was put on the Barretts.
Wow. Okay.
And you could see the impact. And when we would go down there, this target was so big and so heavy, it had a crank on the side. I forget how many thousands of tons it was, but you had to angle the target at like a 30-degree angle when you were done shooting, so the wind wouldn't blow this thing over, because they wouldn't be able to get it back up right.
Oh,
and when the tungsten penetrators would hit, they would stick, and you could see them sticking out of the steel when we would go down and check the target. It was pretty wild.
That is pretty cool.
That's where I had a raccoon chase me, and I jumped behind the Barrett and shot it at about 15 yards. I'm hoping that, time will shield me from any criminal.
I'm sure there's a lot of stuff at the schoolhouse that I, not too proud of.
That will remain unsaid.
That's right.
All right. Now you said something in one of your podcasts that I was curious about. So I want to jump into that real quick since we're talking these rifles and stuff. So First Mardiv, you guys had your own armory as well, and you had your own school rifles?
We did, yes.
Okay. So that surprises me then, because Kalen once said something about he didn't like the Nrls because they had so many problems with them. But we had just the opposite effect, or experience, I should say, where we had very few issues with them, but we also, like I said, Gunny Morgan, there was another guy who came in, a corporal. We basically had our own optic office as well. So I'm going to assume you guys didn't have anybody there to support the Nrls.
Well, so when I went through, we were graduated to Schmitz, and I want to say, because of kind of where Kalen was at in the time frame of sniping, or of his career, the Marine Corps was ready to swap that optic out.
Okay.
You know, and you know how the Marine Corps gets, and I think that was the same thing that I was seeing with the Schmittenbenders, even though they were great scopes. I mean, you know, I got them issued to me in 2007, and by the time I left for the schoolhouse, we were finally entertaining the Night Force 5 to 25, and at that point, I had so many issues with the PM2s, 3 to 12s, that, you know, it was hard to you know, talk good about them in comparison with the other optics that were on the market at that point. So, but yeah, and even the optics tech that we had, I mean, he was a, you know, 19-year-old that just, you know, went through school. And I mean, there were issues with me because I was the lead marksmanship instructor, having to coordinate and making sure guns were ready with the armor. And so that what they would do, even though in between classes that they would, to inspect the rifles, they'd take the optics out of the rings and then remount it. But the way that they ring mounted it, and based off of their manual, they put an RCO on the bridge rail, and that's how they line the reticle up and level out the scope. Yeah. And so, like, I'd have guys on 0 day with issues because their guns are, you know, they're straight up and down, but their reticle's off at like a, you know, not like a 45-degree angle, but it's a noticeable, like at least 3 to 5 degrees. And I'm like, wow. You know, so what ended up happening is that, you know, right before school picked up, me and my assistant marksmanship instructor would go out and we would mount the optics ourselves, which would be an all-day event.
Good Lord. So I guess that's something you had to plan for before every class then.
It was, yeah. Because after every class, I remember LTI PFI'd, all the guns had to get LTI PFI'd in between courses to make sure they're still obviously working well. And then, you know, if not, then we down a gun and then a new one gets sent in, stuff like that. So we typically had about 40 guns that gave us a little bit of extra wiggle room, because the only amount of students that we'd pick up at one time is 32.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the, when you were there, what was the, well, let me back up. A couple of questions here. One, I noticed also, you just said it here and you said it in your podcast that you were the marksmanship instructor.
I was.
Did other people go down? Did other instructors go down to the range as well?
Yeah, other instructors went down with us, especially when it came down to like the first couple of weeks. Just because what we did was we assigned to ensure that the students to instructor ratio was pretty good. But then as I would say after like PracApp 3 or PracApp 4, I would have the students with myself and maybe an assistant, and then one more, so that I didn't have to worry about being the RSO or OIC. I could just focus on teaching students. But as the primary marksmanship instructor, all the instructors kind of, during that specific part of the schoolhouse, all the instructors would not answer to me, but they would ask me, hey, what did you pass the students, or what are the students working on, and stuff like that.
Okay. We had assigned, depending on how many people we had, the most we ever took in was 24. That's what we were designed for. And we had 4 instructors. So you'd have 6 students assigned to you. Yep. And when your students were on the line, you would be on the line with them, coaching them, obviously up until qual day. But up until then, you know, if they're having any issues, then those are your primary guys. So we were all responsible for our own guys for marksmanship and field craft and everything else. Interesting how the different schools do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So I forgot what the other question was going to be, but it's all good. So you got out, or you went in, and when you went in, you didn't have any type of you didn't shoot guns or do anything like that before, correct?
That's right. Yeah. I always say this. I fell into the sniper community on accident.
So when you went to boot camp, I assume you qualled expert.
I did.
Okay. And then I've heard your story. It's very interesting how you fell into it. But it's still kind of hazy as to how exactly did you volunteer for this?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great question, because everyone that doesn't really understand our dynamic of how you get into a scout sniper unit, right? Like there's a process, in terms of like scores and qualifications and stuff like that. So the backstory is obviously in boot camp, I got expert. I was a first class PFT, and I had a GT score of like 110, which are three main, when you're looking at from a book status, things that a Marine has to have in order to even get selected into Scout Sniper School. It's just one of the things that I'm sure since when you went through one of the mandatory things that the Marine has to show that he's capable of. So when I became an 0311, I went down the road, and 1-4 I had just got back from Iraq, and unfortunately on that Iraq deployment, they were disbanded, and the platoon was just coming back from leave, or the unit was just coming back from leave. And then the sergeant major found a platoon sergeant who was a drill instructor to essentially rebuild the Scout Sniper platoon, all that stuff. And essentially what they did was they pre-screened SRBs prior to, and they just looked for people that were 0311s and had high GT and physical fitness scores, and were already expert qual. So in theory, by the book, as long as I was selected in the Scout Sniper platoon, I could go straight to sniper school because I had already hit all the prereqs to be able to go.
So what was the GT requirement when you went
100
through? Okay. And just for everybody out there, that's just the general knowledge on the ASVAB,
yep.
Your overall score. Okay. Now, so which competitions do you shoot?
So I started off in 2015 shooting precision rifle series because that was the only one that was around. Started shooting locally. I found a local club and team that shot, but West End Gun Club, just like north of Rancho Cucamonga, in like the Riverside kind of like boundary there. And those guys, I shot there once a month on the weekends, and then those guys turned me on to the precision rifle series. So that's when I started shooting in 2015. And now there's all the leagues that not have stood up, but have already been around since then that I've kind of gravitated to. So everyone knows the PRS, and then the NRL, and then the new series this year that just stood up was the Nrl Hunter, which I really like. And I've shot a Rifleman Teams Challenge where Carl Taylor, do you know Carl Taylor? He's a former 8541. I want to say Carl was either East Coast or obviously East Coast or West Coast. I want to say he was a West Coast in like the late 80s. Sorry, Carl, if I'm dating you. But a super solid guy. He does the Rifleman's Team Challenge up in the Pacific Northwest. But really, really good. And then the last is the Guardian. which is a cool little shooting competition for charity.
Right. That one I'm familiar with. Now I'm not familiar with the NR. And now NRL is 22, correct?
No, there's a NRL, like a regular series, like kind of like the PRS. Just I would say a lot of the focus is out west. And then the Nrl Hunter, which is a new series they started, which is kind of like a hunting format where they give you classifications for rifle weight and cartridges. So you've got a open light, open heavy, and then a factory division. Factory is the rifle has to weigh less than 12 pounds, but it has to be a factory rifle with no modifications that you can buy off the shelf. The only modification that you can do is obviously put an optic on it and whatever bipods, but you can't drill into the stock. So let's say I bought like a Tikka CTR. I have to use the existing holes there to like mount a Picatinny rail or mount a Arca rail, but I can't drill into it. And the rifle has to weigh under 12 pounds, which is pretty cool. Is that
including the optic?
That's including the optic, yeah.
Okay.
And then open heavy or open light is a rifle that weighs less than 12 pounds. That's with everything. And then a open heavy is everything from 12 to 16 pounds.
Oh, so even it has a top end weight limit.
Yep.
Okay. Now, when you shoot those, so have you shot all of those?
I've shot all of them. Yes. Yep.
Okay. Now, which of those is your favorite?
The Nrl Hunter right now is by far my favorite. It's very, very similar to how, to how practical shooters should be shooting their at long range. You know, finding your target, lasing it yourself, and being able to come up with a firing solution to engage it with a practical, weighted rifle system.
And I assume that's all under a time constraint.
Yeah, under 4 minutes. Okay. So for the Nrl Hunter, the way that you've got is three different shooting scenarios. You've got so you come up completely blind. The range officer that's there tells you, hey, this is your glassing point, and then you got like a left and right lateral limit markers that gives you, hey, this is the furthest left that you'll be, this is the furthest right that you could potentially be. And then they tell you beforehand, okay, this is going to be one position, but you have you're looking for 4 targets, or this is 2 positions, you've got 2 targets, or you've got 1 target but 4 different shooting positions. So those are the 3 types of shooting engagements that you have. And then once you find it, you range it, and then you just shoot that specific order on the clock.
Okay, so it's kind of like an observation exercise.
It is.
An unknown distance shoot all wrapped together.
All wrapped together. That's right.
Now, what are the? I don't want to say the average distances, but what would you say is the closest and farthest you've shot an NRL Hunter?
The closest I've shot was like a prairie dog target at 250. I would say the average distance with targets is about 500 to 600. And then the furthest I've shot, it was 1080. It was like a full size deer target. But within the regulations, they have to keep the targets within 1,000 yards. That was just the one time occasion they pushed that to 1080 because of terrain.
Okay. Now, when you say a full size deer, what is it, like the entire torso, like a silhouette shot of it, or?
Yeah, it was like entire torso with antlers and everything.
Okay.
Yeah. It was hung up by at least 3 T-posts.
Holy cow, that's a heavy one.
Yeah.
How was the wind that day? I hope not too bad.
No, it wasn't actually too bad. I think I remember that shot. I was holding probably close to 5 or 6 tenths, so no more than 5 to 8 miles an hour.
Yeah, that's not bad. Okay.
Yeah.
And steady, I take it?
Yeah, it was pretty consistent.
Okay. Because I was shooting a match at Butler, which is in North Carolina. It's a National Guard match. And I was just NRA because that's what they primarily have around. I have to drive 3 hours to get to that. And I shot a 199 with 11 one day, and the 9 that I dropped, me and the guy beside me pulled the trigger a split second after the wind had just changed direction and pushed our bullet out. Yeah, but I didn't even know what happened. I was like, wow, I called that good. And it was actually the scorer sitting behind me was like, yeah, you and the other guy got hit by a wind change right when you pulled your trigger. It was like, well, nothing I can do there. So,
that's I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of times shooters ask is like, well, like, is it possible when, a big, I guess a big thing that you see, especially in the precision rifle series, are guys coming off the line and they're like, oh, I got wind screwed, Granted that it is a possibility, but if like another thing too is obviously, you want to also look at the shooter to see, okay, well, how well is that shooter even get off his belly? Meaning like if I put that same size target, so let's say a 2 MOA target at 100 yards, so without the influence of wind, how many times do you think he'll be able to hit that 2-inch circle and a 90-second time limit? That's a good thing that Kalen always says, like, when you start blaming the wind, like, all right, do you think you can put all 10 rounds under a 2 MOA circle in 90 seconds from a standing position? It's, it's pretty tough.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
that's real tough. Absolutely. Yeah, I was just glad the scorer caught it, because otherwise I would have assumed it was either me or the ammo.
Yeah.
So I got lucky there. So do you keep a data book?
I actually don't anymore. I actually keep more of like a shooter's journal. Data books is something that I did used to keep back when I first started shooting, coming up in the Marine Corps, and even a little bit on the competition side of the house. But I'd say I have so many rifles now. I just strictly use not rely on software, but I have like these little makeshift dope cards for each rifle system.
Okay. Now, what do you mean by a journal?
So Kalen and I started this like a shooter's journal where you go out to the range, and when you go out to the range, you work on 3 to 5 critical tasks that you want to accomplish. So let's say that I want to accomplish a rifle 0, chronoing the rifle, and maybe 100 dot drills, 21 dot drill, and then maybe serve 5 rounds on wind calling, and then 10 rounds on positional from the standing. So those are the 5 things that I need to get done before I can start messing around. It gives me a guided way to and then for each event, so let's say the rifle 0, I'm writing down some kind of data like, hey, this is how I felt in terms of what's sustained and what I need to work on. So a sustained for my rifle 0 was, okay, I had good breathing, my shot groups look good, but what I really need to work on is my recoil management, because I noticed that after every shot I was coming high and off the target, like to where I wouldn't be able to keep that target in my field of view. So then I'd write that down. And then, for, let's say, moving on to the standing task, let's say that I'd write down just times. Hey, this first time I executed it, I got it within, 80 seconds, and I barely hit a 2 MOA plate. So it means I need to slow down, something of that nature.
So it almost sounds like a Lanny Basham journal.
Yeah.
Okay.
From with winning in mind.
Correct.
Yep.
All right. So when you go to these matches, what do you already create your data card before you go? And I ask this because what is the backup plan if for some reason your ballistic calculator failed or whatever you had failed?
That's a great question.
Go ahead.
That's a great question. So, the evolution of technology is so great to where once you validate your trajectory in certain conditions, you know, you can strictly run off of the data that it provides you out to a certain distance to where you start seeing a little bit of offset. But generally speaking, because target distances are only out to 1,000, I'd say on average, maybe there's like 1 or 2 long range stage where you go out to like 12 or 1,300. Once I validate and make sure my trajectory is good out to 1,000 yards, what I'll do, and this is what's nice about the Hornady Ford off, is on the bottom right corner, there's like a little range card function. And what I'll do is I'll create a range card, like a hard range card, in 20-yard increments from 100 yards to 1,000 yards. And what I do is, let's say I go to a stage and the stage is, oh, it's a 400-yard target. I'll run straight off my data board and I'll be like, okay, 400 yards is 1.6. I write that down or I dial it on my turret. And then, you know, that's all I'm referencing. But let's say that conditions change slightly from what my card is set to. You know, let's say I set my card to like 60 degrees because that was going to be the average. But now I'm shooting, you know, high noon and it's like 80, 90 degrees. And now we're shooting the long range stage. And I've got targets from 1,000, 1,100, 1,200, which is very common, especially out west. What I'll do is I'll take that real-time data, plug it into my firing solution, and then I'll actually pull my firing solution from my solver. And that's really the only time that I ever use my solver in a competition for one stage.
Okay. And what's the farthest east you've shot?
Ooh, the furthest east I've shot is Virginia or North Carolina. Yeah.
Okay.
There's the range called Frontline Defense, ran by Paul Smith, a former Army sniper. Good dude.
That's the Guardian series, right?
He runs some PRS matches, but he does run some Guardian stuff there too. I've shot a PRS match there and a Guardian match.
Now you guys are going to be at Pig River, though, correct?
We are. Yeah. Pig River also hosts matches out in Virginia. I haven't shot any of their national level matches, but they have a really, really great venue.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I'm in Virginia, but they're in Virginia too. But they're as small as Virginia is. They're still 3.5 hours away from where
really?
I'm at. Yeah.
Wow.
They are way down at the border of North Carolina. So.
Yeah, that's what's interesting about. I was actually I was just in North Carolina, and I flew into Raleigh, and we were driving down to Jacksonville, and it took us like 2.5, 3 hours. Just because of the road system there is just so different, and the traffic's compared to like out west. Like, hey, 120 miles, even though there's nothing between you and them, it's gonna take you 2 hours to get there.
Right.
It
takes you 3 hours here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's crazy. As a matter of fact, they just started PRS recently at Quantico.
Oh, I saw that. I was getting messages from some of the guys that are still active duty there, asking if to come out and shoot with them anytime that I'm out east. Yeah,
pretty interesting.
It is. I'm glad. When I was at the Camp Pendleton Schoolhouse, one of the things I did was try to start doing that in Pendleton, but it was tough because it was very hard to, get civilians, even Marines on base with their personal rifles. That was always, it was always a stretch with range control and stuff like that. And like, it's a lot of heavy lifting for the individual, but a gunner that I know, Gunner Jones, he just retired, super phenomenal Marine. And he's also a sniper. He was our gunner when I was at the schoolhouse, and he ended up helping bridge that gap between like the competition side of the house and bring in civilians and even Marines with their personals on base to shoot recreationally.
Yeah, they just they've been shooting USPSA pistol and other stuff. So the thing about the PRS, I'm going to be in 2 weeks. I am having Major Tim Hychak. He's basically the team captain. He's in the teams fall under him at Quantico. Him and 2 other shooters on the podcast. And one of the things I'm going to talk to him about is, having been an instructor there, I know there are unknown distance ranges way out in training areas that border one of the counties where you literally don't have to go on base. You can stay outside the base and just go through that gate. And why not have a PRS match at one of these unknown distance ranges where people don't have to worry about trying to get into base, but it also opens up a whole lot more interesting situations, because right now, as I understand it, they're shooting it on the 1,000-yard known distance range at Quantico. So that means they're just putting targets up in between all the different range yard lines. So I was kind of surprised when I was there. Man, that place was manicured like a golf course. You know, there was no beating up the ranges or anything. I was like, ooh, every time a round hits in between the yard line, I can only imagine what it's doing to the range.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be interesting, though, to put them where we used to take our students out to those ranges and be able to just set them up anywhere. Then you would have to laze them or have a way to estimate that range.
I think you're talking about range 11.
Well,
it's probably different from the range that I remember when I went through advanced course was range 11. That's where we spent most of our time at. And it also had like a little shoot tower from it. But you had out to 1,000 yard, not 1,000, maybe like 890, 950. It didn't hit the edge of the brush. The edge of the tree line started at about 950. That's where the furthest you can set a target.
I would have to go back and figure out. I'm not sure range 11. That might be a newer one, because they created a whole mount facility and some other stuff since I was there. But we used range 7 and 8. Okay. And I think 8 is the one. We use it as a known distance, and I think it was a mortar range. That's the one where the tank was 2,000 yards out. So that was the big one we used, because you could drive out there, you could put stuff in place, and lots of variations. And the terrain was much more like this, not flat. So you'd be kind of almost like you'd be out west shooting, where you could be pointing down for one target, up for another one. So it'd be interesting. So do you keep like for me, I keep a data book. Plus I have all my stuff in an app that I use, but I also use gun books to record every time I shoot how many rounds I fire through the barrel. Do you keep one of those as well?
I do. I keep it in an Excel spreadsheet on my phone. It's on Google, so I can access it on all my devices. And after I get done shooting, I'll just update. I'll do the same kind of information from our gun book: date, how many rounds I shot, the cumulative, what round I shot. So like, let's say I'm doing reloads, I'll put 135s, and I'll put hand loads or HL. And then if I take muzzle velocity, and then I will outline the blue, outline it in blue if that's when I cleaned it. And I try to clean. Well, I'm sure we'll get into that question. I've got to actually plug my charger in real quick. 1 second, Dave.
Okay.
All right, we're good.
Is your laptop dying?
Yeah, I was. I forgot to plug it in. It was already there. I just had to pick it up.
Right. So you said you highlight in blue when you actually clean your gun?
Yeah, so I'll highlight the row in blue when I clean it, so that tells me the frequency of like when I cleaned it last.
All right, well, let's go ahead and go there now then, since you brought it up. How frequently do you clean? And not only that, but what do you use?
Okay. So I would say I've to really answer this question in depth, because it's such a multifaceted question in today's world. I think I've evolved my cleaning routine 3 or 4 times, and it's always evolving. I think the more people that I talk to or whatnot. But when I first started, as a Marine Corps Scout sniper, I mean, whether we shot 20 rounds, 30 rounds, 100 rounds, I cleaned it after every range shoot. Back then we used hops, and super powerful stuff. I mean, stuff that you can't even put your nose over. We would do 3 wet, 3 dry, 3 wet, 3 dry, of copper and powder, and then started talking to the competitive shooters and stuff like that. When I got into the competition scene, they're like, "Oh, you don't need to clean that often. That's crazy. Just clean every time that you realize that your groups are not as good as 100 yards." I'm like, okay, that starts to make sense. But like the Marine in me could not do that, right? It was like impossible to like let a gun go without cleaning. So eventually what I would do is I would just clean probably every 400 or 500 rounds. And then my recent, so like what I do now is my routine is every 200 to 250 rounds, because that's a cycle in between each competition. And the reason why I've gravitated to that is talking to an F-class shooter, his name is Eric Cortina. The best way he put it is, do you ever let your truck go, 10 or let's say 20,000 miles, or before you start hearing weird engine noises before you change oil? And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then another thing too is a lot of times shooters, when they're like, oh, when your groups start opening up at 100, well, one thing that I've learned about long range ballistics and the projectile is that 100 yards is too close for that bullet to really see how it's being affected through your bore until it starts to until you start going down range. And what I mean by that is I've seen it to where I've had really nice SDs where like my muzzle velocity extreme spread is like less than 10 feet per second, but I still have like at 800, 900 a pretty good vertical spread. And that is a result, not due to muzzle velocity, but the projectile essentially having different BCs or ballistic coefficients as a result of your bore condition. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so now I try to clean, if I can, I'll run a couple patches of, and what I use right now is Vortex Eliminator that cleans both copper and carbon. I'll clean after every 100 rounds. So if I'm at a 2-day national level match, I'll zero on Friday with like 10 to 15 rounds, shoot like 5 rounds to confirm, make sure my trajectory is lining up. So 20 rounds there, leave it the way it is, shoot 100 rounds for day 1, and then I'll clean it very lightly, maybe 3 or 4 wet patches, and then dry it out, shoot the rest of the course of fire. And then how my cleaning routine is use a jag, and I run a jag with solvent on it about 25 times. I'll run 5 wet patches, and then I'll dry it out. And then my last is alcohol to make sure that there's no solvents, because solvents actually is what really deteriorates and breaks down the barrel if you leave it in there. And I think I've read where studies have found is like overcleaning your barrel. Overcleaning can hurt your barrel, which is, I would say, true. But there's, just so many variables with cleaning that it's hard to really put, a finger on it.
Yeah. And I would say it depends on what you're cleaning it with too. What chemicals are you using? So I rarely use an actual copper defouling chemical. But like you, I tend to clean a little more. Part of that is the Marine in me. But I also am not ridiculous like what we had to do in the Marines. I don't do white glove inspection stuff, but I'll stick a finger in there to make sure there's no residual carbon. But the one thing I have found that I like, because I use Shooter's Choice stuff, is they have a rust prevent. Now, I don't know. I know California is not high in humidity, but I started this when I was living in Houston, where they have this rust prevent. It smells almost like suntan lotion. It smells
Really?
awesome. Yeah. But I'll spray a patch down after I clean, and I run it through my bore, and I leave it in there because it is exactly that. It prevents rust. And I'll take that same patch and run it over the top of the barrel, whatever the steel parts are, just to keep the rust and corrosion away. And then before I shoot, I'll run one dry patch through, takes it all out, and good to go. And if you shoot any ciders or like you do a confirmation of 0, then it'll burn all that stuff out and you're good to go. Now, you said a 2-day national match. How many rounds is that typically?
So I usually plan for 250. That's what I'll bring with me. Typically, you have 180 to, I've seen it all the way up to 220. Sometimes you go to a match that has 18 stages. Sometimes you have 20, or sometimes you have 22. It just depends on the venue and the match flow. But roughly, you can expect to shoot about 200 rounds. And then I always bring an extra 30 to 40 rounds to, if I show up on a Friday, to confirm trajectory, make sure my 0 is good, make sure my 0 is good from travel, and in the case that, I need a reshoot for a stage because target goes down, or, maybe a bad stage brief, I'd bring a little extra, but I typically plan for 250 rounds.
Do you have a personal formula? Like I have, when I shoot pistol, I have created my own personal formula for determining how many extra rounds I need to take with me. Do you have anything like that for your competition?
No. So like, if I would say that if I'll back plan in terms of like, all right, so the course of fire says if you shoot exactly every 100 rounds, because they'll announce this about a week prior. It's like, hey, expect the round count to be 190 if you get all your rounds off. And then I'll back plan. Okay, so 190, maybe 10 rounds plus 5 to sight in, because I know I'm gonna chase my tail, even though I shouldn't. So that brings another 15, and then bring another 15 to practice or confirm trajectory, and then another 10 in the case that I need to do a reshoot for one stage. So then that's okay. how I'll add on to whatever the round count is.
Okay. Do you always, let me back up. Do you always have to laze the targets at these matches, or do they give you the distance to the targets?
So the great question. It depends on the match style, right? And I think this is why I really love the Nrl Hunter. When you go to like a PRS, a Precision Rifle Series match, and I would say that's very common right now with the style of matches that you go to, whether it be local or a national level match, is a Precision Rifle Series sanctioned match. And typically what happens is the targets are all known distance. When you get to the match, match director will hand you a course of fire booklet that gives you all the ranges and stuff like that. And what I typically do 99% of the time, but I would say not 100, because there's definitely times I haven't listened to my own sauce, but I always bring a rangefinder, and I always range my own targets. That's super important for just any kind of rifleman aspect, is making sure that you range your own targets and not believe what the book says. Because, I've been a match director, and sometimes, my match book or my ranges aren't right on 1 or 2 stages. So those are for like PRS, NRL style matches. Now the Nrl Hunter, because it is blind stages, that's when you have to range on the clock. There are also team matches like Sniper Adventure Challenge, Competition Dynamics, where they're kind of like, find it, range, and engagement. You have to laze them on the clock. So just different styles of matches out there based off of the league that you're shooting under.
Okay. Yeah, I thought I'd seen somewhere. I started to get into PRS when I found the whole pistol USPSA thing, and I was like, well, that looks like fun. So I've been doing that for a few years. Now, what are you using for a laser rangefinder?
So right now, my go-to is a Terrapin X. It's probably one of the most, I would just say versatile rangefinders, but it's probably one of the most technological advanced rangefinders in terms of the Bluetooth capability to a bunch of different softwares, and whether it be Kestrel, whether it be a Ballistic app like my Hornady app, and I've actually got the new Garmin Delta Pro with ballistics in it that it links up to. So when you range it, it'll automatically kick that over to your watch and it'll display a firing solution, which is pretty cool.
Is that why you looked at your watch when you said that?
Yeah, it's actually an Apple Watch right now, but
okay.
Yeah, but I've got a watch coming in that has that to test it out. But some of the guys are already running it. Some guys that I've shot with in the NRL Hunter series. But that's my go-to. My backup is a Leopold TBR with X, I believe, 2800. And then my tertiary, this actually was my backup for the longest time, was a Nikon 4K Black. Now that thing's like $350. You can buy it on Amazon. Probably one of the best budget rangefinders. It's like even handheld, it's like gone toe to toe, like accuracy wise, and just getting repeatable ranges to my $2,000 Terrapin X. The downside is the glass quality is pretty shitty. One of the things that is nice about the Terrapin that I utilize it for especially for Nrl Hunter is, even though it's a monocle, I actually use it as an observation device as well. So my first 2 Nrl Hunter matches out of the 16 stages or 36 stages that I shot, I only had a hard time finding one target.
Even using a monocle, huh?
Even using a monocle. Yeah, because of the glass is so superior. I wouldn't say superior, just for a laser rangefinder, the glass is really, really good compared to your generic rangefinders out there. But if you've got, a good set of binos and stuff like that,
Now, is it because the glass is so good or because you're a trained observer? I had to say it.
That's a good question. I would say a combination of both, because I've ran into issues with some range finding or some glass where I just couldn't see it. The color of the glass and the color scheme of the environment at that point in time, it just didn't make those targets pop. Where you jump on another glass, you can immediately tell the difference. So it's like I know something's there, but I can't really pick it out. So like in my head, I'm like, okay, it's probably nothing. But then I jump over to another piece of glass, or maybe I jump onto my rifle scope and realize, oh shit, like that is something. I should have lased it.
Wow. So do they, during NRL Hunter, do they make those targets challenging to find?
Yeah. So the NRL Hunter Grand Slam up in Colorado, Grand Junction, at a place called Cameo, really great venue. Scott Satterley's a match director, probably one of the best match directors around. And the way he set up his targets is he didn't paint any of his steel. And this is August, right? August, everything's already dried out and dead. Well, the target's blended in perfectly with the rock that's out there, all rustic and stuff like that. So really your brain was really focusing on looking for like outlines and hard edges from T-posts. But sometimes you'd see a T-post, but like you'd be like, that's a T-post, but I don't see anything on top of it. Well, on 10 bites, it doesn't look like there's anything on top of it, but you get down behind a rifle scope and you see every little detail and you're like, oh, Jesus. So I ran into a situation like that, but every match director is different and every environment's different. There's another stage match that I went to even though the targets were all blind, they were all painted. So immediately, you know, they stuck out because the targets were white, right? So immediately, you know, in a sea of green, all you see is a bunch of white targets. So at that point, you're just lasing it on the clock and shooting them.
Are there any? Because I'm not in this. I haven't been active in this for a while. Are there any rifle scopes that have lasers that are worth a damn?
The only laser range finding rifle scope that I am familiar with is the Swarovski DS. I know there's a couple out there, but the DS is nice. It's got good glass. It's heavy. The downside is that it's not adjustable. At least I don't think it is. What I remember when I messed with the DS last time is that it has an illuminated, or it has a duplex reticle, but based off of the ballistics that you have programmed, let's say I range something at like 400 yards, a little red dot will pop up on your crosshairs to tell you what you need to hold for that target. Does that make sense?
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. So it tells you what your hold is inside your reticle with a little red dot.
So I take it then you just put that red dot on the target.
On the target.
Pull the trigger. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. You say Swarovski, and I immediately think I need a second mortgage.
Yeah. I want to say that scope is probably $4,000 to $5,000.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. That's not cheap. I'm looking up the scope you use.
Oh, the Collis 525.
Yeah. I like that it's a 56 millimeter objective lens. That's nice. But I'm curious, what's the reticle in that? Oh, AMR reticle available.
Well, so
what reticle do you use?
The reticle I use is a Skimmer 4, which stands for Shannon K milling reticle, and it's the 4th generation. You know, for competition, I feel like it's a really, really great reticle. I love the windage line, specifically for wind holds and movers. I think just the simplicity and the indication of every 2/10 marker along the windage line is pretty phenomenal. You know, it's very rare that I actually use the holds, even though it's nice. But you know, typically based off the stages, I do have time to dial in between, even with a 90-second stage. You know, unless I'm going for like a speed, that's when I'll hold. But I'd say I only use the actual like vertical post below 1 60-70% of the time.
Okay. So you prefer to actually dial in your dope?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. It seems to be a personal preference type of thing.
It is. Yeah. You know, you talk to every different shooters and their application. I know there's a lot of shooters that just love the standard duplex, like a standard, you know, no Christmas tree whatsoever. Some of the best shooters right now in the precision rifle series came up with a reticle. They're from Oklahoma because they dial for everything. They dial for both elevation and windage. There's no need to use a, yeah. So that is the Skimmer 1.
Okay. Is that the one you use, or is that?
No, so I use this SKMR 4.
Well, dagnabbit. And I'm not seeing it there.
It's right there to the left of the Skimmer.
Oh, yeah, the one with the 4 behind it. Let me scroll down here, see if I can. That's now okay. So here's my question for you. Now, I'll use this terminology. I grew up on the mil dot duplex.
Yep.
Which is way less busy, which I still prefer today, actually, because it's less busy. How do you like this?
I like it a lot, and what I like it is because if you notice, it's a gradual tree. Yes. Whereas, you know, typically just from a actual user standpoint, when it comes to understanding recoil management and having to spot your own shots, the busier the bottom is, the more that you have to get the reticle out of the way to be able to see exactly where your shot goes downrange, right?
Exactly.
And this is why some reticles that are used in the military are actually used in the competition space because of that fact. It's not the fact that it's too busy. It's just it's in the way, right? When you start looking at shooting smaller cartridges like a 6BR, 6BRA, and you're shooting at dirt at 300 yards away, you don't want anything. You almost just want your dot there so that when you shoot, you can see exactly if you do miss, where that bullet goes. So I like it. Like I said, I typically only use the windage line. It's very rare that I actually use the elevation, so like 2 or 4 mils. But in the case that I do have to use like 2 mils holdover, it's nice to have those half tenths to full mil in the case that I need to, hold for both elevation and wind at the same time, so I'm not holding off into midair. Which I found myself doing back in the day of the Marine Corps, right? Where you had a qual, it was called multiple threat engagement, max point. It's called mill holds, and you couldn't touch your turret. You had 5 targets, and you had targets from like 300 all the way out to 700. Well, you get out to 600-700 and 10-mile-an-hour crosswind with a 308. Now you're starting to hold off the body, where you're pretty much holding off in the mid space, right?
Correct.
For your elevation hold. So that's the only downside to a mill dot duplex when speed is a factor. But we just had a conversation with Owen Mulder about this in our last podcast about observation and understanding what the brain and psychology can actually focus on, especially when in high stress environments. And, I'm a big believer, especially with military sniping, there's nothing wrong with dialing for your target and holding the center of the reticle.
Totally concur. Yeah. Let me go ahead and. Yeah, that's not as busy as some of the reticles I've seen. And when I say busy, I just mean there's a lot of what I'll use the word clutter in my field of view. And I don't like all that clutter in my field of view.
Yeah.
That one's not too bad. So do you dry fire?
I do. I haven't dry fired lately enough to, but I would say typically when I'm in a pretty good routine with dry firing, I'll dry probably 10 to 15 minutes a night on one of the guns. And yeah.
And what is your objective?
To marry up my breathing and my trigger control, to make sure that, based off of that rifle and how I set the trigger poundage, to make sure that obviously when I get down in my shooting position, okay, so let's say my main goal is to make sure that I am pressing that trigger without disturbing the rifle. So ultimately, but then understanding that breathing and firing under natural respiratory pause goes hand in hand with your breathing, meaning, you don't want to fire when you're at the top of your breath, essentially. But depending on the trigger weight, right? This is one thing I learned in the Marine Corps is, when you're running a 3 to 5 pound trigger, what I like to do is I like to essentially take the load off of the trigger as I'm exhaling, so that when I get to the bottom of my breathing cycle, I only have about, maybe a pound, a half a pound left, right? Rather than going to the bottom of my breathing cycle and trying to pull all 3 pounds at the last second. For competitive shooters, as I run like a 10 to 12 ounce trigger, knowing exactly at what part of my breathing cycle or at the bottom of my breath, I can actually let off the remaining slack after I felt my wall. So that's typically my goal. And then obviously for positional, I'm working on ways to really minimize my dry fire or minimize my wobble zone, figuring out what ways my body, in terms of applying natural point of volume muscle relaxation, whether like a double kneeling for this specific height or, reverse kneeling, whatever the case might be.
And that's where I see one of the big benefits to dry firing for what you compete in is the different positions and be able to work it out and find what's the most solid position for you.
Yeah. Dry fire takes away half the battle when it comes to shooting off your belly. And what I mean by that is, when I'm building a shooting position, I'm looking at building two things. I'm building stability, but I'm also building my position suitable to manage recoil. Because if my position is stable, but if I take a shot and if I come off target and stuff like that, it's still not a good position, because as a shooter, I'm not able to follow up and see exactly where I hit. In the case I made a bad wind call or even a bad trigger press, right? You know, I feel we've come a long ways from relying on our spotter, and even in combat, from what I remember, you want every gun in the fight. You don't have this unless you have this one target, then you have a spotter. But in the case that you're in troops in contact and stuff like that, you want every gun out there shooting, and the last thing that you do have as a sniper is another spotter, because typically your ATL or whatever's on the gun too, right? So even though at the schoolhouse, I'm sure when you went through or when you taught, same thing. What I taught is we taught with having a shooter and a spotter, and I would say that's even though there's a good dynamic behind it and a good reasoning, what Kalen and I try to teach is making sure the shooter's self-sufficient on his own to spot his own impacts.
Okay. Interesting. I mean, obviously, if you're in combat, you definitely need all guns in the fight. That I totally get. But I'm assuming they're going to be shooting and they're going to have an M4 or something along those lines, some type of semi-auto.
Yeah. So the way that we employed our TO was one bolt gun, and then the ATL or someone in the team was carrying a M110 SAS.
Okay.
That was a new, and honestly, so this was 2016, or when I operated, that was 2013, 2014. So it's been 7 years. I know the Marine Corps has Mark 13s now. So I want to say that the team is at least bringing a Mark 13 and a SAS. I don't really see a use for 40s now, other than like nostalgia reasons. But
Blasphemy.
Yeah. And I've talked to snipers that they could have went, especially during the invasion. They could have easily carried Mark 12s or M110 SAS, but like just something about the fact that they grew up on the 40. It's like, I'm gonna kill someone with this gun that I've trained my whole career with. Like why like, even though strategic or tactically it's not, it's there's no really benefit to it in an urban environment, but it's like just still the right. So
that's why I have a Remington 700 and 308.
Right. It's exactly. I'll always have a 308 with a 20 to 24 inch barrel in my arsenal.
Yeah, so I have a 700 SPS with an A3 stock on it.
Awesome.
Let's roll. But anyway,
you got a fixed 10 power too? What kind of optic you rolling on that?
No, I do not. Actually, I have a less expensive optic. I have an Osprey scope.
Okay.
That I've run through the gamut. Tracking is not bad for the price. It's good. And it's actually the one I shot a 199 with 11.
Nice.
At 600. So I know it'll hold, it's the glass is clear. It's probably like a $250, $300 scope.
Nice.
But it's I have a 4-16 and a 6-24.
Cool.
So yeah, I definitely don't do the whole 10 power fixed. If I could get my hands on a Nrl, that might change things. But
yeah,
again, that would just be for nostalgic purposes.
I had a former 8541. He's probably closer to my generation than yours. He would technically have been my senior. He had actually trained my senior Marines, but we were in the same unit. We had met each other through a union. He had messaged me, and he is still rolling around with his bolt gun, a fixed 10 power. He's like, hey bro, he's like, I want to get into what you're doing. He's a contractor right now. And he's like, I still have I've still got a US Optics MS 10, which is essentially Nrl just under US Optics. And he's like, should I stick with this, a fixed 10 power, or should I get something variable like you're using? I'm like, you should not sell that scope. You should definitely hold on to it, but I would definitely think about upgrading your rifle scope.
Yeah, for sure.
If you want to get into this.
Yeah. And, we actually had John Nrl come to the schoolhouse.
Okay.
One year because we started it used to be the instructor course.
Mm-hmm.
And then we changed it when I was there with Morris, Skiles, Tim Hall, and myself. I don't think Greg Tyler had gotten there yet. Or maybe he had, I don't remember. But anyway, we had John Nrl come down for the advanced course. And one of the things that disappointed me, I love the guy. But what disappointed me was I had asked about, or someone had asked about, I thought, the fine adjustment being half minute of angle. Could we change that to a quarter? And he said, there's no way to do that reliably, which disappointed me because I actually took masking tape and went around the turret and marked the halfway point so I could kind of fine tune it. And it does actually work on that scope. It will make an adjustment.
Yeah.
So I was disappointed that was his answer, because a half minute of angle is too gross of an adjustment.
It is
for what we do.
I'm glad you brought that up. I've been recently kind of like digging into forums and what people are talking about, even with a class that I did. And they're like, oh, as long as I'm on target, I'll be good, 20 by 40 human. It's like, well, that's not the point of precision rifle shooting, right? Mm-hmm. The point of shooting with precision is putting that bullet exactly where you want it, right? Not like, oh, I've got all this room for error. Like, no, that's not, you're missing the point of shooting that target with intention, with precision, right? So like if I can get that target to within, if I get my bullet to within a quarter of an inch of my intended point of aim, I'm freaking happy, right? At 800 yards. It's not like I want it like, oh, I'm within 4 inches of my intended point of aim, I'm good. Well, then that's when you start compounding errors in your head. Like, oh, well, I can just fudge this and be good. I can start fudging this. And the next thing you know, you're barely missing the edge of your target, or whatever the case might be. So I'm a huge fan of understanding that aspect of when you get behind a precision rifle, you are putting that bullet exactly where you want to, not I've just got this much plate to hit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of mil scopes, because a 1/10 of a mil to me is still too gross of an adjustment. That's my hurdle to switching to any type of mil scope. The scope I have is an 1/8 of an MOA adjustment.
Wow.
Yeah, that is how fine I want my gun to adjust. And this is how I look at it. I look at it as I am the weakest part of this system. My ammo is hand loaded, not my 308, because Federal makes amazing match ammunition for the 308 rifle. So I shoot that stuff, and I can shoot between 1/4 and 1/2 MOA out of my gun consistently. So I'm good with that. I hand load my 6.5 Creed, so I'm about 0.32 MOA. So the gun will shoot. The scope is very accurate, so I can fine tune it. Now I just have to do my part. And I figure the closer I can get that gun to shoot perfectly center, then it makes my job as a shooter easier.
Agreed.
As long as I'm doing what I'm doing, I should be good.
Yep. And that's where a lot of I see shooters is, and it's fine, you know, if they've got the means to do it. You know, I'm not saying you can't go out there and not buy a $10,000 rifle. But you have to invest in your training as well, is what I'm trying to get at. You know, you can't have a $10,000 rifle and be a $10 shooter. Right.
Totally agree. Because that's a $10 rifle.
Yeah.
That's
that becomes, you just turned it into a $10 rifle. That's right.
Yep. Absolutely. Now, you mentioned that they have the Mark 13. I had to look down to see where my notes were. What are your thoughts on the Mark 13?
Oh, man. You're going to get me in trouble here. So the Mark 13 300 Win Mag, it's a great cartridge. The 300 Win Mag in general is probably, again, like the 308, probably a very well-rounded cartridge in the sense of killing things in long distance. But I would say that the stretch and the stretch that you're getting with the 300 Win Mag versus some other cartridges out there, the modern cartridges, is very, very minimal. Meaning, I think the max effective, I think they're saying with the Mark 13 is about 1,300 yards. You know, so you've only increased the distance in theory off the books by another 300 yards between the M40 and the Mark 13. I think there's a lot of, it's a step in the right direction. But I think that there are definitely a lot better cartridges out there to equip our Marine Corps snipers with.
In your opinion, what would you have gone with?
Ooh, I think somewhere around like the 300 Norma, 300 PRC. Those cartridges right now, based off of the bullet selection and what those cartridges are designed for, would have really, I think they would have done a better job for the military service members or the military snipers. The 300 PRC is designed to utilize longer bullets. That, again, I think that's a big misunderstanding with a lot of shooters. Are like, well, the 300 Win Mag and the 300 PRC are the same. I mean, yes, they are the same, but the 300 PRC is designed because of the advancements of bullet technology to be able to push longer bullets, whereas you are stuck with, you know, a mag length to a 300 Win Mag with that specific rifle or its specific cartridge. And just because of the case design. So,
right. And I think that's what people forget about, is it may be the same caliber, but that doesn't mean the cartridge is the same.
That's right. So
that's something to take into account. So the cross section will be better on the longer bullets, give you better BC. So I'm going to bring up something that you had mentioned since we were talking distances and all of that. You'd mentioned in one of your, I think you did an entire podcast on it, as a matter of fact, how milling is a legacy skill.
Oh, yeah. So where that comes from is the fact that when Kalen went through cyber school and taught at cyber school, when I went through cyber school and taught at cyber school, it was a very single point of focus in the curriculum, where I don't see the practicality behind it because of, again, the advancements of technology. And again, I know, you know, even though we shouldn't rely on technology enough, you know, but I still don't think it should be a complete emphasis in a curriculum. Whereas, you know, you can still accomplish very similar like tasks or even more tasks by integrating max point blank, mill holds, barricade shooting, rather than 10 quals of the same thing on your belly, milling out a target, you know, that's standing just like this in front of you.
Right.
Right. Perfectly squared edges. Right. And when you're in the prone, because again, when you're in combat, your target's not standing still, your target's not facing at you the whole time. And you're probably not going to be in a very comfortable prone shooting position. You're probably going to be set up in a tripod if you built a hide. And, you know, now try milling a target that's moving off of a tripod kneeling sitting position. Right. Yeah. I mean, it starts to get really difficult.
Very sketchy.
And so I think should Marines know how to mill a target? Absolutely. Or should Marine Corps Scout Snipers know how to mill a target? Absolutely. Should it be a evolution that they spend, I want to say 14 training days on? No.
I agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you guys. I think it's a good to know skill. I think there are better ways to do it. Like you're saying, whether it's a spotting scope with mill relation or some type of mill reticle in there. There are better ways to do it if you want to know how to do it. But I totally agree. I mean, look, when I came through and I was an instructor, there was no over-the-counter laser rangefinders. You know, you couldn't do it, couldn't get it. So luckily, when we were instructors, the or the chief instructor was able to get a hold of a military laser, and we would confirm all of our targets on the instructor staff with that.
Nice.
So we can make sure that we, you know, everything was correct. So that was a good thing. But nowadays, I mean, literally I could go down where I could get on Amazon and buy one of 1,000 and have it delivered in 2 days. So why do I need to know or rely on something that's unreliable?
That's right.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because there's a lot of instructors that I see in the space that I follow on Instagram and stuff like that, that they put it in their curriculum like they're teaching some kind of magic sauce. You know, it's like, no, you know, it's not that difficult. Like, you go on YouTube and watch someone do it. I mean, even with the trigger cam now, which is phenomenal, you know, you could literally just, you know, have someone do it like, hey, this target is 20 inches and I'm just going to measure it and then do the math. And then that's it. Right. So I guess I could see, you know, curriculum wise, why it'd be nice. But if that's a single point of focus, you know, guys, I even know guys that have where this comes from too, is like, I see guys and riflemen struggle with even managing a rangefinder with their kit, right? What the process is to, okay, I've got to target an unknown distance. How do I now get the distance to that target, whether it be lasing it with a rangefinder? I mean, typically we'll get so one of our qualifications for we don't even call it a qualification, we call it a evaluation. One of our evaluations is engaging targets at unknown distance, utilizing a laser rangefinder. So we give them a rangefinder, whether it be ours or, you know, we tell them to bring their own, and we're just watching them manage their equipment with that laser rangefinder, not getting an accurate range to target because they, you know, are trying to freehand it, but the target is only like 2 MOA wide, that has no backstop, right? And the target's only like 300 yards away. So they're lasing behind it, and they immediately see, well, even though the target's 350 and, you know, or even though the target should be 300, but you range 350, that, you know, 0.3 or 0.4 difference, if you're not making a good press, you could just go easily right over the target.
Absolutely.
So like, you know, getting the proper range to the target is just important, right?
Yeah. And I think you could spend your time more wisely instead of the mill relation formula on wind reading and external ballistics. Those are the two big ones.
Yep.
You know, you know, then you know what your gun's going to do in certain conditions. And if you can read the wind and all the different stuff going on, your propensity for a first round hit just increases, which is exactly what you're trying to do.
That's right.
So how big are you guys on, I assume Well, let me back up. How big are you guys on cold bore shooting and knowing what your cold bore is at different ranges?
That's a great question. So every morning for class, and it's funny that I was actually writing down content ideas, and one of the content ideas that I definitely, because it is hunting season, I want to do is how to track your cold bore, right, accurately, and how do you apply it in the field. But the way we do that is at our courses is we have every shooter shoot the very first round of the day, and then followed up by a 3-round confirmation group. So essentially what they'll do is the very first thing we give a safety brief in the morning and be like, hey, you're going to shoot this target. And then on the group to the right, you'll shoot a 3-round confirmation, just to make sure that in relationship to your cold bore, right, your group, your cold bore is in a half MOA because your zero's off, essentially, right? Does that make sense? Because sometimes shooters will just shoot one shot and be like, wow, I'm like 1.5 MOA. And then they think that, okay, well, they need to apply that in the field or like the next day on a live shot, but then they're 1.5 minutes off because their zero somehow walked, right? So we want to make sure that, okay, what's your actual cold bore from your 0 point of your rifle? And then that's how we have them track it. Now, as far as applying it, what I like to do is if I know my first shot is typically and I only like to work elevation. Windage is one of those things that, and honestly, I haven't seen a cold bore more than a minute in any of the rifles that I've shot or have seen shooters shoot. But typically what I'll do is I'll dial the offset into my dope if it's an elevation issue. And if it's a wind, I will just still call the wind as is without any influence of my X dispersion.
Okay. You mentioned moving targets in competition. How many times do you run into moving targets in competition?
Not that that's very rare. Probably one every 5 matches that I shoot. Based on the venue, based off the match director's ability to obviously know a shooting moving company. One of my really good friends out here, Pete Knipe, and I'm not sure you probably listened to one of those podcasts. If you listen to all of them, he was on here and we talked about a new series that he was standing up. Him and I are really good friends. He lives out in Cody. He stood up a training or a long range shooting kind of group out here called WPR, Wyoming Precision Rifles, or Western Precision Rifle. And he fabricates moving targets. And what's nice about that is, when he's doing any kind of modifications on the moving target system, he'll bring it out to practice every Wednesday and we'll shoot at it. So I get a lot of good training on moving targets. That being said,
the distance?
Typically 500 is what we set it out to, 400 to 500. And he typically sets it right at about 2 to 3 miles an hour.
Okay.
Sometimes 4. Depends on the distance of the target. If he pushes that all the way out to 500, he'll use a full size IPSC. If he keeps it in at like 4, he'll use a 50% IPSC or maybe like a 16-inch steel plate. Like we have jackalopes out here because of Wyoming. So we have sometimes he'll put a jackalope steel target that's about 16 inches wide out at 400, which is 4 MOA, 4 MOA target, moving at about 3 mile an hour, which is pretty doable. So.
All right. Maybe you have a 3 mile an hour crosswind going the opposite way and cancel each other out.
I'm glad you brought that up. So actually I did shoot. So earlier this summer, we had we have a venue out here that I was able to lock on with the landowner, and him and the landowner are really good friends. But we started teaching class out there this year. It's called Heart Mountain, and Pete also runs a charity match that all the donations to the match, both registration and stuff like that, go to the Special Warriors Foundation, Special Operations Foundation. I think I got that wrong, but anyways, I was ROing that match because there's no sense in me shooting it because it's one of the ranges that I obviously shoot at for training and for classes. So I decided, I was like, hey, Pete, I'm just going to help you RO. And he stuck me on the mover stage. Well, up on top of the mountain, it gets some pretty high winds. And the target was at about 550 yards. Well, the target when moving from left to right was about 15 miles an hour. The wind was to where you would just have to hold on the target and it would offset the lead.
Nice.
Yeah. And then on the way back, when it's moving against the wind, you would have to double your lead because of the wind. So it was pretty cool.
Wow. That's a pretty good wind reading lesson right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Goodness gracious. All right. So we'll get into the couple of things here real quick. One of the things I did listen, I've had another guy on here, another former Marine, Mike Seeklander, big name in the pistol world. And we talked a little bit about instruction. He actually put out a book that I got. Let's see here. He put out a book I ended up buying, The Art of Instruction. Pretty interesting. So we had a brief discussion about it. And I noticed that you and Kaylin had a conversation about instruction on a podcast, teacher versus instructor. And I thought it was a very good conversation and goes into something deeper that I think, whereas with the teacher portion being, you could almost say, I would almost classify that person as a mentor. Mm-hmm. I mean, an instructor, anybody can, not anybody, let me change that. Someone who knows a topic can get up and instruct a period of instruction on something if they know it. But that doesn't mean they can actually sit down with you and teach it to you and make you proficient at it. Does that make sense?
That's right. So, you get a class, for instance, a sniper school class of 32, right? Every single 32, I wouldn't say every single one of them, maybe let's say 16 out of the 32 all have the same receiving style of information or teaching style, the way they learn, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe another 5 have a different, maybe another 5 have a different, and then there's that 1 or 2 that you just have to spin it a certain way for it to click.
Right.
So when an instructor gives up and starts speaking the instruction based off of the PowerPoint or based off of whatever the topic is, an instructor is just facilitating that. And for I'd say about for those 15 students that are just able to just pick it up as they see it, or typically just visual or audio learners, and then just like, oh, okay, I understand that. But then they just move on to those instructors will just then move on to the next slide without understanding that, okay, well, maybe not everyone has just comprehended what I just said. I feel like a teacher will understands how to read the room and be like, okay, I'm going to say it one way, and I'm going to see where it bounced off or who it bounced off to, right? Whether they're just giving me like the
blank stare,
blank stare, right?
Yeah,
and at that point, I think what separates an instructor from teacher is that teacher then takes the time to be like, okay, I realize about 50% of the room just got it. Now I'm going to take a stab at the other 50%, and I'm going to say it this way. And, re-articulates it. And then maybe another 25% are able to get it. And then he sees that, okay, there's still another 2 that don't get it. Now he can either continue to move on, or he can be like, okay, well, let's bring it down into even a different Barney style way of saying it. Because at that point, I think what happens is the 15% that get it off the bat, off the first go around, they immediately like, okay, I understand that. By the time they hear it a third time, they are now putting in their data bank when it's them to become leaders or teachers for how they're going to articulate it to their now junior Marines or whatever the case might be. Because one of the things that I remembered, and I'm sure this was the same thing with you and you were teaching, is that I knew not only was I teaching snipers or trying to make snipers, but I was trying to make future leaders of our community that were going to eventually become the subject matter experts in their units. Because when they graduated and became 8541s or 0317s, they went back to their unit as the man, right?
Yeah, and that's how they were looked at. Yeah,
and that's how they looked at, and they are going to be kicking instruction and stuff like that. And they could have graduated the bottom of the class. Nonetheless, the unit didn't care about that. They are now the man, and they are probably going to be kicking classes to the new guys. So for me, I knew it was a double-edged sword of making sure that, okay, not only do I want everyone to get it, but I want the people that do understand it and that are probably going to be teaching this to have now better ways to communicate that information as well when it's their time to be on the podium.
Yeah, I mean if you have 250 medical students that graduate, what do you call number 250? A doctor.
A doctor.
He's still a doctor. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like the same thing. You may have 32 students that graduate. That 32 may have that 32nd one may have just made it in, but he's still an 0317 or 8541. Yeah. So he's still looked at as the expert. But it was a very interesting question because now I teach paramedics.
Okay.
And one of the things I teach is what we call med math. So it's medication math. And a lot of these guys are not the strongest in math. So it takes a little while. And I have found that is one of those topics where everybody has to understand or you can't move on. So it requires more explanation. I also teach what they in the medical field like to call wound ballistics. We know as terminal ballistics. So I explain what the real term is, but then I talk about wound ballistics and all that. But that's one of those topics where if there's one or two, I can move on and we'll talk during the break. Yeah, it's not critical that you know all of that in order to understand the topic. So it's also, I think, for people understanding when you can move on, when you cannot, when you must stop, or those one or two people are going to be completely lost and they'll never get it.
Yeah.
So, but I've also found that it's not widely known. I've also had a lot of interns that were paramedics, and I've had a lot of interns that were what I'll call retreads, but it's not always their fault. A lot of times they've been paired with somebody that just doesn't understand their way of learning, and they only know one way to teach.
Yeah. So
there's no, you basically have a failure with an intern when it technically isn't their issue. It's that FTO, which we call field training officers, which should be field teaching officer, because it's kind of like, it kind of goes back to what you and Kaylin were talking about on one of your episodes where, this guy may not be school trained sniper, but he's going to be operating with you. So teach him everything you know to make him better, to bring him up closer to your level.
That's right.
And it's funny. I see the same thing in the medical field where they don't do that. They just want to regurgitate that 1 hour period of instruction and not teach them what you've learned.
Yeah.
Because if you teach them what you've learned, then you shorten that learning curve for them to get to where you are.
That's right.
So I thought that was a good topic that you guys covered. All right. So now for the one controversial question. And that is, what are your thoughts on the sniper school going away?
Ooh. So, I haven't actually heard that. I know there's rumors of it. let's say a sniper school does go away. Like what are assets that are replacing snipers, on the ground snipers? So you got drones and you've got DMs dedicated to the sniper unit. Well, guess what? You've got drones, and then you have everything that just, I mean, if we're talking like facts here of what just happened, that came out about a week ago with the drone strike, right? And you have a lot more of that. And what snipers do is minimize collateral damage 100%, right? Because they are on the ground, they are actually seeing through a rifle scope, not through some kind of fucking lens up in the sky. They are actually watching human behavior and identifying if that person is a threat or not.
Trained observer.
You know, and that is with the proper utilization of and employment of snipers. And this is, I think this is why snipers are going away, is because as shitty as it is to say, is we haven't been at war and we haven't had enough, I would just say competent, because I've met a lot of competent field grade officers, infantry officers out there that I will serve with any under day. But then I've also ran into my fucking fear of shitheads that don't know what the fuck they're doing. That they think because they are, you know, an officer, that, you know, they shouldn't, you know, take the word of a sergeant or a corporal that's a team leader. You know, that sergeant or team leader or corporal knows best on how to employ his team. And as long as you give them the freedom of movement to do that, right, they're going to essentially show you otherwise. But I would say my best senior leaders that I ever had, my best battalion commander, my company commander that I've ever worked under, that gave me the freedom of movement, had experience with employing snipers in combat that were very successful. And it's typically the young officers that don't know how to employ us, that are very skeptical of us, because they just don't know.
Did they do away with the sniper employment classes?
No. So the sniper, well, no, they do have sniper employment classes. And so this is I guess our dirty laundry right of our community is that what I still don't understand is I'm not sure. Did they have infantry officers as platoon commanders back in the 80s, 90s? Uh-huh. Okay, so we have S2 officers.
I know. When did that change?
Okay, so I honestly don't know when it changed. I want to say it changed probably around the time that, because you guys were stay, right?
Well, I spent most of my time in the recon battalions.
Okay. So
but I do know that the stay platoons, and I want to say they had a platoon commander, but they also, they were basically employed by S2.
Yeah. So from my understanding, stay stands for, it's not my understanding. I know stay stands for surveillance and target acquisition. So prior to the Scout Sniper Platoon being titled the Scout Sniper Platoon, the secondary task of snipers was to provide obviously surveillance and put in ground sensors and stuff like that. So there'd be a scout side and then an actual sniper side. Well, then eventually, I think in the early 2000s, it eventually became a Scout Sniper Platoon, where the sole focus was to provide precision fires on selected targets of opportunity, yada, yada, yada. Well, our platoon commanders were intel officers that directly reported to S2. And yeah, so I would say, yeah, that's the biggest gripe. It's like, why do we have a S2 officer? Granted, they're great. Like all the platoon commanders that I've had were phenomenal. One of my last platoon commanders, one of my really good friends, I keep in touch with him. He gave me a lot of great freedom of movement. The problem is if you look at the pipeline of an S2 officer, they never end up becoming battalion commanders or company commanders. They go on their pipeline of whatever intel, the platoon commander that I'm talking about. He works at the Pentagon now. but never does the way that they learn how to employ snipers ever go back into who are actually going to be employing snipers in the field, which are company commanders and battalion commanders. So that all was like weirded me out, and I was always confused by that aspect.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I know there's been a lot of discussion about. I guess there are some units already running their own sniper courses. That's what it seems like. I mean, the word on the intranet on the line.
No, so right now, and this is actually just talking to a few instructors recently, is that right now the snipers are still, obviously they're still creating snipers. There's a new program instruction changing. Snipers are not seen in the new task force, I think in like I can't remember what year it is. But essentially snipers or designated marksmen are going to be taking the place of snipers in squads, right? If anything, snipers will be only a recon asset capability, from my understanding.
That's the rumor I'm seeing.
And that's what I've heard. And again, I could be butchering this, but the recon community just stood up their own course, the recon sniper course, which makes sense. Whereas they are strictly focusing on like marksmanship and field skills, such as stalking tasks, versus all the other tasks that they already accomplish in BRC, right? So like when you go through the Scout Sniper Basic course, those Marines are tested on observation, land navigation, observation, communication, right? Well, a basically qualified recon Marine does all that in BRC, right? So why are they going to repeat doing the same task again at the Scout Sniper regular course? So that's why, and that honestly, that makes sense with the evolution of courses, that they stand up there. And what that allows now is the unit, the battalion, infantry battalions to have more availability to send Marines to the regular basic course. Now now that those units aren't fighting with recon to send, 6 guys. So out of 32, they're getting all 32 infantry unit guys, not 26 infantry unit and 6 recon. So I feel like that's a pro.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they keep the SSBC, it is a pro.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure there's some of our peers out there that are like, oh no, they should be, they should go to the, like, of course, like a gatekeeper side of me wants to be like, yeah, I think you should be born and bred to the Scout Sniper Basic course, but at the end of the day, like, why not try to make the most qualified person behind a rifle like when you're all taking bullets on the same roof together? I don't give a shit who's fucking school trained or not.
Right. I mean, in a perfect world, what I would like to see is if they're going to have instructors at another sniper course, then they should be, basic course qualified. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And then that to me would make you qualified to teach.
Yep. That's right. Yeah. So, I'm not sure if you're in with like Mask, the MARSOC Sniper School.
I am not.
Okay. So, what's in our community, there was some grumblings about, that being a 0 to hero course. Well, little does some of the community know that every instructor at Mask, they were all former 0317s as infantrymen.
Okay.
Right. Because, the grumblings of some, Marines is the fact that, okay, well, because when you can go to MARSOC without having an 03XX MOS. You can lap move into MARSOC as like one of my radio operators in my last deployment, who's an 0621, went over to MARSOC, passed the selection, did his pipeline, went over to Mask, graduated Mask, and now is he's essentially an SF level 1 sniper, whatever the qualifications they come out with. Whereas some of our peers would have a heartache with that. It's like, well, he's not, he didn't come up to it's like, dude, does it really fucking matter? Like, Are you really that, like, are you really holding on to your identity that much that, you know, and essentially I would say that 0621, even though he was a radio operator by trade, will still, based off of your, you know, your qualifications you went through basic course, will outshoot you, you know, based off the modern qualifications that Mask is running those guys through. You know,
interesting.
So
okay, that's
just the way I look at it. And this is coming from a guy that's a stay baby by trade. Like I mean, like,
right.
I'm like tradition.
That's all
like,
you did.
Yeah, that's all I did. I mean, I went to school after being a pig for fucking 3 years. And like, if anything, like I have, you know, holding the community and the pipeline near and dear to my heart. But at the end of the day, it's like, you know, the goal is to create someone that's capable behind a precision rifle or a long gun, with the understanding of, with the advances of technology, how to incorporate that into training, not to use it as a crutch. Right. And I think that's, you know, the emphasis for modern day snipers. Okay, what advancements of technology that we have now that we can incorporate into our training to help us, again, just train a lot better and be more effective with the tools that we have today.
Yeah. And I'm all for, you know, MARSOC or whomever having their own sniper courses that are more appropriate for them. The only thing I don't like to see is the basic course going away for the infantry battalions, because I mean, look, you had World War II, you had Korea, then you had Vietnam. Each time they had to throw stuff together for snipers because there was no official platoon or designation. So finally, at the end of Vietnam, they got tired of it and they created one. They created the entire curriculum, you know, all of that. You'd hate to see it go away, and then the next time they need it, have to throw all that stuff back together again. When they've been proven that, you know, when trained properly, they're very successful and they're a huge asset. So to the battalion commander. So that's my only issue that I hope that it doesn't change. So
agreed.
Well, let's take a quick minute. I know we've been on here for a bit, and let's talk about modern day sniper. What is modern day sniper?
So modern day sniper is a team of a millennial sniper and an old school sniper. Kaylin's gonna love that.
Hysterical.
No, so modern day sniper is we want it to be not just Kaylin and Phil Velayo. We want modern day sniper to be a mindset, to understand that as scout snipers, as traditional scout snipers, because Kaylin's an 8541 and I'm an 0317, but still the way we were both raised, we were both scout sniper instructors. We still understand tradition, but because, like we just talked about, the advancements of technology, especially in today's world with in regards to long range shooting, has really helped us just be better at killing shit, just hands down, right? We see a lot of the dogmatic training and instructors out there that hold certain techniques and certain things because, you know, it's what they did back in the day, and like everything else nowadays is a crutch. Whereas we see it as an opportunity to speed certain things up, such as getting your firing solution to your rifle, such as understanding external ballistics, such as, you know, knowing how to utilize today's technology to just be a better understanding of how long range works. And, you know, on top of obviously being proficient with our rifle as modern day snipers, you know, we incorporate a huge mental aspect and understanding. One of our taglines is mindfulness behind the rifle, because you and I both know that one thing that I do love about shooting long range is the therapeutic aspect behind it, right? As soon as I connect to that rifle, nothing else matters. The only thing that matters is how I drive that gun, what distance it is to my target, and when I line my crosshairs up to that target, what my wind hole is going to be in order to connect that, 140 grain projectile at a target that's a half mile away. So what do I have to do as a shooter to, make all that happen, right? Because once you connect that steel, it's a pretty therapeutic feeling, right? But like I said, nothing else matters. You're not thinking about your mortgage. You're not thinking about, your angry ex-wife. You're not thinking about you're not thinking about anything besides putting that piece of bullet into the air and hopefully hitting steel. And, with that, it allows you to be completely in the moment. And now how can we take that essentially and apply it to other aspects of our life, such as our home environment, maybe our work environment, our relationships and stuff like that. So we're constantly talking about breaking down our ego, because there's a lot of ego that surrounds just the firearms community, I would say. Would you agree? I mean, you've been in this
absolutely.
for a while.
That's actually why I got out of teaching when I did.
It's funny that you say that.
Drama and egos.
I struggle with that daily, saying that, sometimes like what I see in the community is just like, wow,
Yeah.
And thankfully, I always tell this to people, my passion is teaching, and I would say teaching and mentoring. And I just so happen to teach and mentor my hobby. That's how I get around working with modern day sniper full time, because I'm not actually, doing my hobby for a living. So yeah, I would say that that's what modern day sniper is in a nutshell. We try to focus too on staying relevant through sniper competitions, podcasts, not cyber precision rifle competitions, so that we're teaching up to date and relevant information, making sure that we're at the front edge of technology and techniques, but also, remembering our foundation as Marine Corps Scout snipers. Like nothing beats the fundamentals of marksmanship. Like that's huge. With the growth of the precision rifle sport, there's a lot of shortcuts that you can take to essentially buy impacts. Lighter cartridges, heavier rifles, $3,000-$4,000 glass. Again, putting emphasis on the system rather than the actual operator, right? And we believe that, at the end of the day, like having a strong foundation in fundamentals is what's going to carry on throughout to the life expectancy of you touching a rifle than, buying the latest gear, right? And we want everyone to come through our course and come out to be just a better rifleman. Like I'm not like, if you want to be a better competitor, sure, like I'm going to teach you to do that, but I want you to be a better rifleman, because in the case that your rifle goes down, how do you fix it, right? One of the things that I remember being in the cyber community, the only thing I was authorized to do was pull the bolt out and take the bipods off. Right. I'm not sure if that was the same thing. And it's like anything above that, you had to go to level 1 or level 2 maintenance, echelon maintenance. It's like shit, but now like I disassemble my guns all the time. The only thing I don't do with my rifles right now is chamber them, right? Which I'm sure I'll learn in the future. But, I have my gunsmith semi chambered rifles and 6.5 Creedmoor. I've got my own barrel vise, and I can put a rifle together from start to finish. And I was thankful that when I jumped into the civilian side of long range shooting, that I found mentors that were able to teach me that, because I didn't learn any of that during my career as a sniper.
Nope. The only other thing we could do was torque our gun. That was it.
We couldn't even do that because we didn't have torque settings.
Torque wrench. Gotcha.
Torque wrenches. Yeah. So
yeah, well, we had them at the schoolhouse. That's where I used them, and I knew already how to do it. So, but wow. Yeah. Well, that's all I've got, Phil. Do you have any final comments or plugs or anything?
No, Dave, thanks for having me on here. I appreciate it. It was great questions. I think, it was refreshing because, it's not, it's always hard guys like us to talk about ourselves, right? Because it almost seems like we don't want to always feel like we're bragging, right? More or less just creating awareness of, who we are and what we do. No, I appreciate you having us on your platform. For everyone that's interested in checking out Modern Day Sniper, we've got YouTube, just Modern Day Sniper. If you want to train with us, we do in-person classes. Just head over to www.moderndaysniper.com. And then we've got our own little social media platform called the Modern Day Rifleman Network. And that's just www.moderndayrifleman.com. And, we try to build that site to avoid all the trolls and stuff like that of long range shooting, because I'm a part of like freaking 50 Facebook groups, and like a guy that asked an honest question about like, hey, I'm looking at, shooting out to 1,000 yards. What optic is the good one? An honest question. And then the guys are like, well, Carlos Hathcock used a 10 power fixed back in Vietnam, so that's good enough for him. It's like, all right, dude.
Right.
So you'll find none of that in the network. It's pretty policed up. Not that we policing, but the people that come there, right, have just great, honest intentions of helping give back to the long range shooting community with their experience. So
awesome. I'll have to check that out.
But yeah, this was great. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I have to have you guys on again together sometime when you guys are both available.
Definitely. Yeah, Kalen's on a hunt right now, so hopefully he's getting after it.
Right, he's doing a real life Nrl Hunter.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, Phil, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, buddy.
You have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Until next time.
Don't be a little bitch.
Yeah.